We move on quickly to Dr. Maliha Khan, who is the Chief Programs Officer at Malala Fund. She's spearheading the effective delivery of programmatic work for girls' education, including the Malala Fund Education Champions Network. And wow, what a network! So we move on to Dr. Maliha Khan. And one of the big pieces that she is as an expert in is the program design and performance, but also looking at aspects of learning and accountability. The notion of girls' empowerment through a rights-based program approach is something that is very important to her. She's been a professor of gender studies and has implemented women's programs in marginalized regions of Pakistan. So she's a non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council, South Asia Center, and a trustee for CARE International. But recently, I just must share that, of course, we invited Malala to be here as well. And but Malala was so busy, and her recent interview with the Atlantic Council on 8th March was absolutely phenomenal. Where the way Malala speaks is so powerful. But I think the whole idea, and I remember because my engagement with Malala was in 2009 when schools shut down in Swat, and where she says that why she feels strongly that education is the right for every citizen, and if it means it's a responsibility of every government to provide that, and girls are equal, and what was so deprived when it came to her and schools shutting down, that's how she looked at that one entitlement that was taken away from her and really belongs to every girl in the whole world. And hence a very exciting program of education champions. Without much ado, we'll come back to that. I'd like to have Dr. Maliha Khan, welcome her, and thank you for being in Pakistan. And we look forward to hearing from you about the program, the notion of distributed leadership, the young champions making the ordinary extraordinary, but also so much more that you are doing. Let's hear and see what is the vision for gender equality through the Malala Fund program, particularly in Pakistan, and how you've seen it play out during the COVID period. We at Idara Talim O Aa are particularly delighted since we are running the program Asman Se Baatein, which is again a second chance program for girls, empowerment and gender equality, all the way over to Dr. Maliha Khan. I hope the screen share is there. Yes. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Bela, and thank you everybody else for the invitation and this chance to speak. I will apologize beforehand if my connection isn't the best. As Bela mentioned, I'm traveling right now, so not at my usual sort of desk space with the right types of connectivity, but we'll try to make this work for as long as I can. Bela, I'd really like to talk a little bit about the approach that Malala Fund takes to girls' education. So Malala Fund has a mission that's squarely focused on a very, very simple statement, which is that every girl has access to 12 years of safe, quality, and free education. And of course, in that, there's lots of things that many people have already spoken about already. The first is the 12 years, the fact that, as you mentioned, we have quite high enrollments of girls at the primary level, but then we have a very sharp cliff of girls that don't continue into secondary school. And so we are very concerned with making sure that girls are able to continue to secondary schools, secondary level of education, particularly through adolescence, because this is where they fall off. The other is, the quality piece of it. We know that girls are less likely to continue on to tertiary education and even less likely to continue on to professions. And that has a very strong linkage, of course, with social norms, but then also very strongly linked with the quality of education and what is thought to be appropriate for girls to get an education in. And so, of course, there's a strong discouragement around sciences, around technology, and then taking on the sort of tertiary qualifications around technology, which is also, really problematic, particularly in contexts like Pakistan. Um, the way that we fund work is, as you already mentioned, we feel that education is the right of every citizen, particularly girls, and it is the responsibility of every government, every state, to provide to their citizens. And so we work very closely with the distributed leadership model, as you mentioned. We've created a network of education champions in Pakistan. These are local and national organizations, and ITA is one of them, that work on the issues of girls' education in a variety of different ways. And we try to network them and create a leadership model within them so that they can advocate for the rights of girls and try to find innovative solutions around the social barrier problems, around the technology problem, around the access problems that we have in the country, and really come up with appropriate contextualized solutions for that. And that's what we're focusing on. The other piece I wanted to touch upon was the impact of COVID. As we know, COVID's been, one of the biggest shocks that has occurred globally around the world. And while it is primarily a health shock and a pandemic, there have been obviously implications into other areas of life as well. And education is one of the ones that's been very, very greatly affected by it through school closures. As we know, schools were closed for a very long time, for many months in Pakistan. They recently were starting to open up, and now in Punjab, they've announced another few weeks of shutdown, I believe. And so this closure has a huge impact, obviously, on the well-being of all children. But our research at Malala Fund that we did in different contexts shows that the impact on girls has been disproportionate, and that's for a number of reasons. One, the prioritization of girls' education. We know the chances of girls dropping out from school after a prolonged absence is higher than it is for boys. Families get out of the habit of sending girls. Girls become valuable providers of care in the household. Our research has shown that a girl is has three times more sort of work to do in the house at the time of the closures and pandemics than a boy does. And so therefore the need to keep her there, or her ability to create time for herself to to pursue her education is much more limited. And then as soon as they sorry, having a bit of a problem with the technology, just coming back to you now. Sorry. Oh, and the other issue that girls are often facing is that we know, and several people have mentioned this already, that girls have less access to technology. And there's a number of reasons for that. There is the great example that was just given, that often the gatekeepers, the brothers, fathers, uncles, cousins, often feel it's inappropriate for a girl to have access to digital technology, be it a smartphone or a laptop, etc. And the access they do have is often negotiated by other male members in the family. So they borrow, it's a family phone, they borrow time off of it, or so forth. And so we found that while the government had made tremendous efforts around around providing alternative channels for education, there was girls were not very likely to get access to it, and they weren't able to access it in a way that was appropriate for their own education.
So we were talking already about the pandemic and the challenges of access to technology for girls. And of course, the work that you're doing on champions and the networks and the distributed leadership. What is your vision for a scaled up approach to gender the Malala Fund?
For Malala Fund, I think the key element that we really emphasize is education. And I think that's, again, come across, with what so many people have said. In order to get skills, in order to get information, in order to be entrepreneurial, in order to contribute, to the formal economy, all of this is not possible without education, and is not possible without secondary and even tertiary education. So our main focus and ways of realizing gender equality is by keeping girls in school, by keeping them safe in school, by allowing them to learn in school, and to make sure that, you know, all the sort of things around them allow them to continue to learn. I think that is the best long-term investment that one can make in so many areas, but definitely for gender equality. And I think that, you know, that if we can actually instill quality, 12 years of quality education throughout Pakistan for every girl, we've gone a very, very long way in changing the country, the economy, the society, everything towards all the aims that we try for.
One last question. I know that Malala said something that, you know, when you look at public and private, the Malala Fund does not really have make exceptions when it comes to low-cost private sector or public sector. But she does say that because it is a quasi-public good, it is important for public sector to be able to take on the mantle of responsibility. In Pakistan, how do you see your work playing out, and how do you see your work focusing on social change with good recommendations to our policymakers and, of course, the private sector as well? Because we're in the midst of a Pakistan education policy which is about to come. Uh, what would be your recommendations there?
I think there's, you know, a handful of recommendations, and these are coming, and we are also in consultation through our Champions Network with the Ministry of Education around the policy and other things that are going to come up. One is obviously to urge the government to keep up their investment in education. I think one of the biggest problems in Pakistan is that we have never been able to invest enough in education due to a number of different factors, and that is very, very vital. The second is to focus on quality education at the primary level, to build that foundation for all the students. You know, we know that the quality of education in Pakistan is really poor. Children can go, boys and girls both can go through many years of education and still not really have learned that much. And I think for that, focusing on familiar language, focusing on Urdu, making sure that children are understanding concepts before we start to introduce too many other types of languages for them is really, really important. So that would be one of the things we would urge people to focus on. And then the other is to keep the demand side of education up. I think we underestimate the role of communities and families in holding the government accountable, in holding schools accountable to the quality of education that's provided, whether that's a low-cost private school, you know, one of the more elite private schools like Beacon House, or one of the government schools. Parents have a tremendous role to play in making sure that the children are receiving the proper education that they have the right to. So those would be some of the things. And then, of course, there are very specific issues around access to technology. You know, allowing girls to have access to technology in this day and age is vitally important. The social norms around that, कि लड़की खराब हो जाएगी, we really need to move beyond those, and understand that, you know, this technology provides a huge avenue for girls to learn and to contribute to their families and communities. And then, of course, some of the other things around physical mobility, access, and all of those. But I won't go into all, you know, those in too many details. But these would be the 2 or 3 key aspects that we would ask everybody to consider.
Thank you very much. It's just been a privilege to have you here and to be in Pakistan, and to share, you know, the work, the strategies that you are using, and to keep on hearing Malala's inspiring words all the time, which are so, you know, so what should I say? So natural. They just come out right from her guts and her soul. I mean, and meaning every word of it. And I think the way you people have looked at champions, some working on financing, others on technology, others on animations and content, and this whole spectrum of work is just fabulous. And this notion more and more of alliances and teams and networking and making many more champions, I think, is so inspiring for us. Thank you for all that you're doing, and I hope you will be seeing much more of you in Pakistan. There is a request
Thank you.
from Shakil Khan in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, who's saying that, can we have more awareness, more information when it comes to new laws that are coming out on protection of domestic violence, or protection when it comes to education, on child labor, etc. And I hope Malala Fund will also be able to look at some of these areas of being able to provide that level of awareness, which I think is also needed when it comes to having in safe spaces, as Janara said. You need safe spaces in schools and society to be able to think freely. Would you be able to
Yeah,
look at some of those areas also as a request that's come
yeah,
from our
absolutely.
participants?
Yeah, absolutely. I think thank you, Bella, for that. I think it's very, very important for girls to know their rights and for the communities to know the rights of the various members of their families. And we will continue, I hope, in the future, in the years to come, to work with local organizations and who are really embedded at the ground level to enable them to do this kind of work. So looking to partner with some of the absolutely inspiring people who are on this particular webinar, but others also to continue that work. And you can count on Malala Fund's support and Malala's personal support and voice for all the things that need for the rights of
Thank you.
girls and for the work that's being done in Pakistan.
And Malia, I am such a greedy monster right now. So, building on what Sania has been saying, and Dr. Sania Nishta's plans, which are really at scale, this combination today of leaders who've been speaking, and we're coming to Amina in a bit, is that we need to see you people as co-investors in these large-scale programs of the government, the innovative approaches to 12 years of education and technology. And also I'm latching on to what I said to Janara, we need to have Nest.io go right down to the rural areas, because that's where a lot of enterprise lies, and where we need to bring girls and women out of the enterprise of the informal sector to the formal as well. I hope that the Malala Fund will be able to also support ideas that come out of this conversation.
Uh, I really cherish these opportunities to network with people that we may not have worked with as closely before. So definitely look forward to that. And I know we can count on you, Bella, to bring us all together.
Very much for being with us. It's just been absolutely exciting to have you. And we're moving